or take our jobs, or stick it to middle-class families at a time when they already feel like they've gotten the raw deal for over a decade. I hear those concerns.
No, you don't, Mr. President. As you look at what the Civil Rights Commissioner has recently said, he sent you a letter basically saying that your policy would devastate, and those are his words, devastate the black community, because blacks are the most affected actually by your policy. You look at the unemployment rate, over 60% of black youth, over 20% in many of the other categories of black. They're the ones that are actually taking the biggest hit. And so there seems to be no care for those groups or those that are trying to do things honestly.
But that's not what these steps would do. Our history and the facts show that immigrants are a net plus for our economy and our society. And I believe it's important that all of us have this debate without impugning each other's character.
Again, he changed the subject. Immigrants. I believe immigrants are. But the fact of the matter is that somebody that has less than a high school education level actually is a net drain. They take more than $1 million in services than they actually produce. And so if we only allow immigrants into this country that have low education level, the typical illegal immigrant has an 8th grade educational background. And so what the statement you said is immigration in all, but that's all ranges, and that's not what's happening. It is primarily uneducated immigrants that are coming to this country right now, which will be a net drain on this country.
Because for all the back and forth of Washington, we have to remember that this debate is about something bigger. It's about who we are as a country and who we want to be for future generations.
And on this thing, I actually completely agree. If we want to be a free country that values liberty, that values the uniqueness of this country, of the republic that we live in, that no other nation in the history of this creation of the world has been able to do what the United States has done, but it's based on a rule of law where we treat people fairly and honestly, and those that come here recognizing the freedoms that we have. Limited form of government, where actually our Constitution restricts what the government. Those are the blessings that have made this country. And this president fundamentally wants to change those underpinnings, which means at some point we will not be great if we had continued down this road.
Are we a nation that tolerates the hypocrisy of a system where workers who pick our fruit and make our beds never have a chance to get right with the law?
And again, you look at what happened. What about those people that are picking fruit, or worse than that, all around the world that want to come to this country? Are we going to discriminate against those individuals? Those people that are here illegally have gotten a free education system, have had access to health care. They get more than 99% of the rest of the world. We've already provided that, Mr. President. But they are not entitled to have our citizenship or to live here permanently over those that have waited so long to come to this great country. Many of you know that my wife is actually a legal immigrant. I've experienced the immigration process from start to finish. I had to make 4 separate trips when we were living in Ukraine to Moscow. One for a background check, one for a medical check to make sure that she wasn't bringing in some disease, another to make sure that we were still married after 6 months, that we could actually kind of have a green card interview, and then another one for the documentation. And so I know the process. My wife knows the process. Over the years, I've had immigrants from over 20 different countries, hundreds of immigrants come up to me and say, "Chris, we know that you get beat up on this issue, but thank you, keeping it. Nobody is our voice." That's what I plan to be, is the voice of the legal immigrants or potential immigrants from around the world trying to come here.
Or are we a nation that gives them a chance to make amends, take responsibility, and give their kids a better future? Are we a nation that accepts the cruelty of ripping children from their parents' arms? Or are we a nation that values families?
Again, this is actually a red herring, because nothing in the law, these parents that get deported back to their countries, nothing is saying that their children have to stay in this country. They have the option to take their children back to them. But again, what this president is doing is forbidding those people that are already here. You look at somebody from the Philippines, have to wait almost 20 years to bring another member. We're ripping families apart the legal way. And with the president's amnesty, we'll make it even worse. I have a good friend, or actually two friends, both were in line right during the 1986 amnesty. Because of the amnesty, they had to wait an additional 5 years to come to this country. Many of these countries, that's life or death. Somebody from Ethiopia has a significant chance of not making it to the age of 16. And so every year that you postpone it, you decrease the likelihood that they'll be alive. And in many cases, what happens is they're in line so long that their children turn 18 during the process and then are not eligible to become across on their visas. So it takes them 15 years. Their 4-year-old becomes 19, and then they have to wait another 20 years to break that. So we're dividing families all the time, Mr. President. I wish you'd listen to the stories of the legal immigrants.
Works together to keep them together. Are we a nation that educates the world's best and brightest in our universities only to send them home to create businesses in countries that compete against us? Or are we a nation that encourages them to stay and create jobs, create businesses?
Well, a number of points too is we do have to question this. Why are we spending millions and millions of dollars on foreign students of taxpayer subsidized money and then sending it away? That doesn't sound very smart to me in the first place. So let's make sure that if we can, let's take American students. And it is great that we educate these individuals, and we want the best and the brightest, but they need to stand in line. They shouldn't we shouldn't discriminate in favor of these individuals just because we're lucky enough to come to our universities. It should be a fair process for everybody. But again, the question I have is, are you really saying that we don't have Americans that are smart enough and bright enough to get these positions at the universities? You look at what happens oftentimes at these universities. What will happen is professors will know if they have a foreign student that comes, then at some point there'll be a reciprocal agreement, and this professor will be able to go to a foreign country and have a sabbatical in that. There's a lot of, I think you have to say, let's be honest about deception. There's a lot of corruption in that whole process in the first place. We need to look at that.
Right here in America. That's what this debate is all about. We need more than politics as usual when it comes to immigration. We need reasoned, thoughtful, compassionate debate that focuses on our hopes.
Again, this comes back to my hope. Let's be honest. I'm not a Republican because I believe necessarily in supporting the party. I'm a Republican because I believe that their principles of what I believe this country really should be is the best party. And I'm going to protect those principles of the U.S. Constitution, the freedoms that we have, the way of life that we have. And so I do use the Republican Party as a facilitation because I think they best match those goals. But again, if you want to be realistic about it, Mr. President, let's talk. We know that you have an agenda, a progressive agenda, and if you give amnesty to these individuals, you know and I know that they will vote primarily Democratic. And to me, that means less freedom. You'll see your religious and political rights dissipate. It is. I hope people realize that this is a serious battle. This could probably be one of the most serious battles that we've had in the last 20 years. If we allow this to happen, you will see liberty vanish quickly, and we'll just be like one of the many other countries in the world. We'll no longer be an exceptional. And this is a president that has already stated that he doesn't think that we're exceptional.